We are joined on board the AEM Manufacturing Express by Senator Mullin from the great state of Oklahoma. Senator, thank you for being on board with equipment manufacturing.
Yeah, and I've offered to drive it too.
You have?
I drop my CDLs plus my CDLs with the chauffeur, so I can take off on it.
Well, accepting applications right now, so we'll put you at the top of the pile.
It
And
probably pays better when I'm getting paid right now, so I'm pretty good.
pay is terrible, sir. So I would.
Well, the hours better.
The hours are much better.
Okay, good. My hours.
Well, let's dive right in and let's talk a little bit about American manufacturing.
All right.
Why is American manufacturing so important, not just to the great state of Oklahoma, but to our economy and our national security overall?
Well, let's break that down, right? National security. Let's talk about manufacturing from just a perspective of being able to spin up when we need to spin up, right? During World War II, we wasn't necessarily prepared for war, but we had manufacturing here. We had steel companies. We had vehicle manufacturing. We had components made here. We didn't have to import anything. In fact, it was this big thing about, made in the USA. And even when I was growing up, everything's made in the USA. Walmart used to be everything. That was Sam Walton's big thing about made in the USA. And so when, in the national security perspective, when things did hit us, unprovoked attack in Pearl Harbor, we were able to spin our manufacturing to a national security perspective that no other country can match, right? And I'm talking about even from the pharmaceutical side of it to the tanks, to the rivets being made,
Right.
to the farm and production of it, to the socks being worn by the troops. We were able to do it all right here without having to outsource anything. Today, let's say something took place. Our steel industry is in shambles, right? Our manufacturing, we can stamp and we can assemble, but we can't make the complete vehicle. I mean, there's one little chip that can disrupt the entire entire auto industry. In fact, that one little chip can disrupt our entire manufacturing
Right.
hub as a whole, because even the equipment that we mill a lot of this stuff with has a chip in it, right? And we
Right.
can't even do that. Pharmaceutical, at one time, over 90% of antibiotics were made inside the United States. In fact, over one time, 99% of antibiotics were made inside the United States. Today, less than 1% is made.
Right.
Over 80% is made in China alone. That fight a war without antibiotics, you're going to be cutting limbs off again. You're going to be like we were in the Civil War, and bones, and the doctors are going to be called sawbones because they just chopped everything off. So, from the national security perspective, it's huge. Now, from a point of pride, just a point of pride, when things have stamped on "Made in the USA," it has a certain amount of quality to it that we know is going to last. You can buy your kids a toy that says "Made in the USA," that toy is going to last. You find one that's stamped in Taiwan or China, especially, that toy's going to last for a week. I mean, I have Hot Wheels.
Yeah, that are still
working.
Yeah.
I mean, and I did everything to these Hot Wheels. Right?
Yeah.
I repainted these Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
I was the one that would find stuff to lacquer and take the paint off of it, repaint them, and you play them in a sandbox, leave them outside, come in, they still work. I mean, the stuff today, you push down on them, the tires just kind of flatten out. I have 6 kids, so
You know a little bit about toys, yeah.
Maybe I still like to play Hot Wheels. But I mean, I'm just going from my experience. There's a sense of pride, but there's a sense of quality that comes along when it's made right here in the United States, and we've lost that. We haven't lost that because the ambition isn't there. We've lost that because we've regulated the industry out of the United States. It's not because of labor cost. People can talk about labor costs. It's really not about labor costs because they're paying to bring the product back to us anyways. And so you offset the labor costs. We have a pretty robust infrastructure, right? So one thing that makes us competitive around the world is because our cheap labor is because we have roads and bridges, we have waterways, we have ports, and we have airports and air transportation where you can get a product from point A to point B extremely efficient, extremely quick, better than any place in the United States. But the regulatory environment has pushed manufacturing out because it's unpredictable. As a business owner like myself, you can't predict
Right.
Business costs only 4 years at a time. And because of the way our politics work and our regulatory environment is ran by the White House now, not by Congress, because through executive orders, the manufacturing industry is always pivoting and moving every 4 years, depending on who's running the EPA and who's not running the EPA, who's in charge of the permits and who isn't in charge of the permits. Can't even get the permit to get it done. What about the air quality or water pollution or so-called water pollution? The new standards that come along with releasing, whatever product it is that they've got to be releasing, that they built their plant to make this standard, and now 5 years later they're saying no, that standard's not good enough. You need to meet this standard, and you priced them out because they can't adjust the cost of the product that much. So, I mean, I could go down that rabbit hole forever, but manufacturing is lost because of Washington, D.C. and the regulatory environment.
Well, and that's well said. And in our case, as equipment manufacturers, we know that every new regulation costs us about $5,000 per employee per company. So even if you are, and particularly if you're a small employer, you got 50 employees, and I was a classics major, so don't ask me to do math, but 50 times 5,000, that adds up, and that's one regulation. And then you're dealing with 5 or 10 or 15. All of a sudden, the numbers don't add up anymore, right? And so if we want to incentivize American manufacturing, we ought to do the opposite of that.
You know, we back in 2011, what drove me into politics was that we had a company basically regulated out of business, right? And it just drove me nuts because it wasn't my ability to find a niche that the public needed. It wasn't my ability to finance. It wasn't my ability to manage. It wasn't my ability to hire the right people or fire the right people, which are both very important to do. It was some faceless bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. regulates out of business, right? And so I had my CFO at the time, who she still works for me to this day. I went to her and I said, Stacy, find out how much it cost us to meet every regulation, state and federal, either a mandate or regulation, which two of them one and the same, mandates or the same things, regulations. And it took her a while to come back to me. When she came back to me, she said, we spend roughly 42 cents on every dollar that comes inside the company to meet either a mandate or a regulation, state or federal. And I said, that's including taxes. She said, no, that's out of taxes. I don't consider that. That's outside of that. I was like, you're kidding me. And she says, no. And so we walked through it. And I was challenged on MSNBC about this, by the way. And I made a statement at that time, which they blew up all over the place, because this was in 2013, that I said, well, if we continue down this road, we're going to be paying $20 per hamburger at McDonald's. They're like, Congressman Mullin said we're going to be paying $20 for a hamburger at McDonald's. Look at what's happening in California now.
Yeah.
Right. And
I could take you to a burger joint in Washington where you're paying $20 for a burger.
That's why I said McDonald's.
Yeah.
This isn't reality, people.
Yeah.
This is why this is called the bubble.
That's right.
And so I took them through my office. I said, well, let's just walk through the front door. And the first one we're going to go to is the HR department. Everybody in that department is there because of the Department of Labor, and then you have the Federal Department of Labor. So you have the Oklahoma Department of Labor, and now you have the Federal Department of Labor, which they don't mesh, by the way.
Right.
And every state can say this. And then that's just the HR. Then let's go to the payroll department. Everybody in the payroll department, except the person cutting a check, is because of state or federal mandate. And they say, well, no, that's part of payroll. I was like, no. Part of payroll is I'm paying you $20 an hour, and you work 40 hours a week. I should only have to pay you $800. But that actual $800 is actually probably cost me, because of FICA and everything else I've got to match, is probably cost me around $1,200. I mean, workers' comp. Which
right.
People say, well, you got to have workers' comp. Yeah, I guess you do now, because mandated for us to have workers' comp. It's not because we choose to have workers' comp. We choose to have insurance. Now you can't even choose to have insurance if you have over 50 employees. And so you continue to add those costs. And then when you walk out of there, let's talk about the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, which doesn't always mesh with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which they do work together, but yet they don't. And we haven't even started talking about all the continuing education classes that we have to deal with. We're not even talking about all the safety checks we got to have out there for every vehicle that rolls on the road. We haven't even talked about the Department of Transportation, or ODOT, Oklahoma Department of Transportation, or the Corporation Commission that's separate from that in Oklahoma. So, I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole forever, and you can easily see where you can get to 42 cents on the dollar. They want to know why so many small businesses go out of business.
Well, there's your answer, right?
They don't know the true
Right.
cost.
Right. Right.
Most people don't know the true cost it costs you to deliver the good. They bid a job and they figure in their hard cost. They're not figuring, and they don't figure in the regulations of hard cost.
Right.
They're just figuring labor and material to get to the job done. They're not figuring all this other stuff out. And that is what sinks most people. And that's what sunk us in the manufacturing too, when you want to talk about it, because that's unpredictable.
Yeah, and uncertainty is the biggest killer
Yep.
in business. So, talk to me a little bit about what makes Oklahoma special for manufacturing.
Well, I will, let me use Google as an example, right? I mean, Google you don't really think is manufacturing, but they are manufacturing a product that people's using.
Yep, every day.
Right. So I asked the CEO of Google, I said, well, why did you pick Pryor, Oklahoma to move such a large portion of your business to? And he said, oh, that was easy. It says your access to talent. And I said, what? He says, your access to talent. He says, and not to mention your work ethic.
Right.
And I was like, well, I agree with that. We complain about, young people not wanting to work like they used to. Okay, well, my dad's generation complained that about my generation too. I said, so I guess that's just us getting old. But he looked at it totally different. They were coming from California and they were looking at Oklahoma. Man, we stand out.
Yeah.
Right. And then they started talking about, well, but your access to educated workforce too, because he said, right here, we're within 250 miles of the University of Arkansas. I mean, they're a lot closer than 250 miles, but I'm just saying within 250 mile radius. He says you have University of Arkansas, U of A, you have Oklahoma State University, you have the University of Oklahoma, you have University of Tulsa, and that's just your D1 schools. You can start talking about NSU, Northeastern State, Pitt State, which is in Arkansas, which is in Kansas, but it's right there beside us. RSU, Rogers State University, and then you start talking about your D2 schools, and man, you just hit a big list of those around there, and then you're not talking about you hit in your JUCOs, and then you can actually take that 250 mile radius out, and you can run up to Wichita,
Right.
and then you could actually get K-State too.
So it comes down to people.
Yes, and he said, so your access to the people there in your workforce is wonderful, and then when you start talking outside of Google, your access to getting your product out of Oklahoma. We have the farthest inland water port at west of Mississippi. That's open 365 days a year. That's why 50% of all the ag goods north of Tulsa, north of Tulsa, come through that canal. Most people think that Oklahoma's water are landlocked. We're not. Then you have BNSF and UP that run crisscross all across our state, and then we're the center of the United States.
Right.
I mean, all your major interstates are coming through Oklahoma. Not all of them, but I mean, all of them down here. If you want to go around someplace, you can get there. You can connect wherever you want to. So the accessibility to get the products where you need to go is pretty easy too. We're centrally located.
And great roads. We know that because we spent about a week traveling with this bus around Oklahoma.
Well, I'm just going to say that is something we don't hear a whole lot.
Yeah, well,
8 years ago, you wouldn't have heard that. Oklahoma state legislators took a very hard look at this, and Oklahoma Department of Transportation. 8 years ago, we were 49th in road and bridges. We're now almost a top 10 state.
Yeah.
Because of how much investment, true hard dollar Oklahoma tax dollar investments we have put into our roads and bridges. And our current Governor Stitt, has always said he wants to make us a top 10 state in everything. We're almost there with the roads and bridges. I mean, we've taken it a long, long ways. Because 8 years ago, you'd been replacing your shocks, your tires, and you'd be getting your packages.
Well, we had a very smooth ride in Oklahoma. Before we get to the next question, I just want to pick up on something you said, right, about the labor and the work ethic. We've always maintained that as long as it's a level playing field, American manufacturers can outcompete just about anyone. And so that's just a point worth stressing. Speaking of road trips, speaking of our time in Oklahoma, we are in the midst of the Great American Road Trip with this bus. 10,000 miles, 22 states, 85 stops. I figured we would end with a couple of road trip themed questions.
Okay. I love to drive, so I'm good.
Well, we've already put your name in there for the last week. We're going to be out in Wisconsin. It'll be cold, but we're going to need you. Favorite road trip memory?
So my favorite road trip memory was probably in 2013, we had bought our first recreational vehicle, right? It wasn't a motor coach. We wasn't there yet. But we bought this thing out of Bozeman, Montana. And we had 5 kids at the time. And we were taking a big swing across western United States. And we had a challenge. It was an older RV. Spent some time working on it. Air conditioner went across, literally going across Death Valley. It was getting so hot, it was throwing breakers all over the place. We had a crosswind one time that was blowing us so hard, I really did think it was going to turn over. We were sitting at a RV park, and the window got shot out of it. You think, well, none of this sounds fun. We had a blast.
Yeah.
We absolutely had a blast. We drove 7,000 miles and had the best time. My kids still talk about that road trip because every time we had a setback, we just made something fun of it. My wife is the absolute queen at making lemonade out of lemon. And we enjoyed it. We still keep track of some of the friends we had. Like when we were broke down one time, we met a group of people that were just awesome to us. And so that's probably my favorite trip. We went from Oklahoma all the way down into Arizona, ended up all the way up to Washington State, came through Montana and to the Dakotas and dropped down, and we crisscrossed all across there, right? And
It sounds like one hell of a road trip.
it was a lot of fun. I also came back, sold that one.
Yeah.
And since then I've upgraded 3 more times. So
Favorite road trip snack?
this is kind of a sad moment for me. Used to be peanut M&Ms.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I'd take the peanut M&Ms and I would try, because I can drive for hours and I like driving at night too, and never turn on any sound and be totally good with my thoughts. Or I'll turn on an audiobook. I'm not one that listens to music, but I would take peanut M&Ms and I would try to see how many I could get all the chocolate off the peanut without breaking the peanut.
Yep.
And I would stack them in my cheek like a chipmunk. The most I ever got was 12. I'm convinced you cannot get more than 12.
Well,
and I've eaten pounds of peanut M&Ms. However, a few years ago, I get bit by a stinking tick, and I developed a peanut allergy. So now I can't have peanut.
Well, that's a shame.
So I've switched to watermelon Sour Patches.
Oh, those are good too.
Yeah.
I know what I'm challenging my kid to tonight. See how many of those M&Ms.
If you can get more than 12, I want it videoed. Because
All right.
I'm convinced there isn't anybody out there who can get more than 12.
You heard it here. We're gonna try to take that challenge.
You can't break a peanut. It's
No.
splitting it in two.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as breaking a peanut.
Agreed.
It has to stay intact
Yep.
completely.
12 of them.
12's the most I ever got without breaking.
All right. Well, last question.
Yeah.
And this might be a difficult one for you, given what you just told me. If you have to play a song while you're on that road trip, favorite road trip song?
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash.
It's Johnny Cash. I don't care. Let's just go there. I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah.
We'll just go with that.
That's a good
Let's
one.
go with that.
And you have. Sounds like, at least on that road trip.
Yes, and so Johnny Cash it'd be Johnny Cash and then Chris Ledoux. I'm old school, right?
Yeah.
You hit some Chris Ledoux stuff in there. I never got into Elvis Presley though.
Neither have I, but I do like Johnny Cash. I'll make you a deal, Senator. When you join us for the last leg of this bus tour in Wisconsin in October, we'll have some Watermelon Sour Patch Kids. Yeah. We'll have a lot of Chris Ledoux on the old playlist, and you'll be ready to go, and we can finish this thing in style with you behind the wheels.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hey,
good.
We appreciate everything you do for American Manufacturing, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.